Today I actually want to go through and do some documentation stuff in addition to like talking about business side of things.
Oh yeah,
Um,
the boring stuff.
yeah, but there was a really cool talk
So
I went
fun.
to
Hi,
at
Gemma.
GDC. Hi, Gemma.
Ooh, a cool talk.
Yeah, a very cool talk. I need
So
to try and
what
remember
we're
what it was
going to
actually
title this
called.
on YouTube is Austin Talks About GDC. Also boring business stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, so, um, what it was is it was a talk about the four one-page documents that every game project should have.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to go through and make those documents. Spoiler alert, we're only going to be making three because one of them is a um, should be created as the game is developed, not in advance. But the
That's
other
fair.
three are intended to be done at least before and kind of updated with. So I'm just going and making those in our Google Drive right now.
Perfect.
Um,
I'll get that up so that I can stare at you as you
yeah.
type and see all of the mistakes that you make
Yes. So I am.
and judge you extremely harshly for it.
Yes. So let's go ahead and um, all right. So we're going over here, and now everyone can see my Streamlabs. That's okay. So we have here three documents that we are going to be working on. So real quick, I will go through and discuss what the four documents are, including the last one that we're not going to work on
Mm-hmm.
yet. And then we'll start with the first one. So, in order, the documents are the vision document, the pillars document, which you might be familiar with. It's a more common kind of
Yeah.
game design document concept, a game loops document, and then the resource flow.
Mm-hmm.
So, general idea behind these documents is that these are typically what we would call internal documents, which are documents intended only for the team to use and to see. But because we're doing things in a weird way and kind of developing more open and publicly, I figure why not let other people see what's actually going on with these. So generally, they're not marketing materials, not something that you would hand to a publisher and be like, "Hey, look at this! It explains our game." It's more just for making sure that the team is on the same page about certain things. Um,
Yeah, which that's I think the most important thing.
I agree. I agree. And especially since we're still unsure if we're ever going to work with a publisher anyway or to self-publish, that's something that we'll have to figure out eventually. But
Yeah.
um, so first off is the vision document. So um, the vision document is really barely even a document. It is like a sentence to a paragraph long, erring towards being a sentence long, and it's basically designed to answer the question, what game are we making? It should kind of give an idea of genre and any differentiating features. So, for example, like a 4X card game might be an emperor, not a manager. That is the example that I am stealing from the talk.
Eh.
Um, and then there will be a few bullet points underneath, kind of clarifying some of the specifics. So, sense of building an epic empire from the 4X kind of genre, but in a short play time of an hour or less from a deck builder genre. Card play is
Okay.
primary interaction, but on an interstellar map. Strategic depth, but with manageable complexity of decision making each turn. And those are kind of the key points of that vision statement. Um, so for us, we'll kind of get into what that might be for our game. Also, just to throw it out there, because I don't know if we ever say it enough, but the name of our game, as of right now, our working title, is Take Me to the Woods. It is a community. Well, we'll get kind of into what it is, I guess, a bit later, but generally a community
Community building
sim
sim.
uh, inspired by games like Stardew Valley, Harvest Moon, and Animal Crossing, with a focus on queer characters and queer stories, um, as well as just cool stories. They don't need, yeah.
Focusing on people experiencing joy and happiness, and if they happen
Exactly.
to be queer, then cool.
Yeah.
Because
So
queer people are not specifically really different than any other people.
Nope, nope. That's the secret. But
It's a secret sauce, I know.
yeah. But because it, well, one, because it started out as a game jam themed around Queer Joy, that's kind of the part of the
Yeah.
core idea and core identity of the project. But also because there aren't nearly enough stories that do focus on queer identities and queer happiness and queer joy. That's kind of what we want to really touch on a little bit. So
Yeah.
another example for a vision statement for and kind of help differentiates kind of what it is Guitar Hero, the vision statement might be something like, does it rock? Whereas Rock Band might have the vision statement, is this an authentic band experience? Kind of emphasizing the different directions that those games take, even within very, very similar genres. And again, I'm
Yeah.
just pulling this from the photos I took of the slideshow of this talk, and little things I'm
What? You mean you
remembering.
didn't take intimately detailed notes?
I do not have the note taking skill. I never developed that skill in school. Um,
Bro, me too. That's why I'm only on online classes so that I can pause the lectures and keep up with the notes.
that is very fair. I also feel like I don't learn online. I only learn in person by just listening to the person lecturing, which is great.
Oh,
It's super
I've
helpful.
been doing good with the online classes at least. So the
That's
ones
good.
that suck are the ones that don't have lectures and it's
Yeah,
literally just reading and it's just like, goddamn, please.
that makes sense. All right. Well, moving on to the next document, which again, people who do game dev probably are vaguely familiar with. This is our pillars document. So the idea of the pillars document is it's about establishing kind of the core identity of your game in three-ish to five-ish pillars. The core things that support your game and that all other parts of your game should also be supporting. Um, so the way that the person giving this talk put it, which I actually really liked, is it answers the question, what game are we not making? And it kind
Mm-hmm.
of establishes guardrails and boundaries that really generally shouldn't be crossed. And the most important thing that the game must get right and that everything else should support. So if you have a very clear, concise set of pillars that everything is successfully built around and built to support, you will have a very well centered game. Your game will feel very consistent and very clean. And even if those pillars themselves may not line up super cleanly, you can still get interesting systems based on
Yeah.
just having these three-ish to five-ish central ideas. Um, so again,
For us, I think a huge pillar is that we are not a farming game.
yes, and we will get to that. But
But like
um,
that's like immediately the first
yeah,
thing
yeah,
that
yeah,
came
yeah,
to mind.
yeah. Um, so going back to that 4X slash deck builder game idea that the lecturer had given at the beginning, some of the pillars that they had suggested are for that game is you are the emperor, meaning, and then some notes under that are one individual, not bogged down in micromanagement. So, by being the emperor, you are a single sole leader. You don't deal with the day to day running of your empire. You more
We deal with
deal
the
with kind of the
delegation.
broad direction of your empire. Their next pillar is fast games, which notes underneath that are turns are constrained and short, only a few decisions each turn to minimize analysis paralysis, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and a total play time goal of 1 to 2 hours. The
Makes sense.
third pillar that they gave is your deck is your empire. As your empire scales, your deck becomes less predictable and more unwieldy. Fat decks mean you're doing well. So uh, generally, it kind of gives the idea that by expanding your empire, by expanding your deck, which is counter to what you would typically want to do in a deck builder,
Yeah.
you're kind of making your empire more powerful um, in contrast. So what this could mean as a um, design pillar is that you might end up designing cards that benefit from having more cards in your overall deck. So like,
Yeah.
gain 1 gold for every 5 cards in your deck or something like that. It allows you to design towards your pillar. It allows you to design and balance your game and your game flow so that it supports this pillar of your deck being your empire, wanting a bigger empire, wanting a bigger deck, even though that is not something that you would typically do in a deck builder game design. So I think that's kind of a
Or
cool balancing act.
yeah, or just going off of the examples, having a card that gains power for every card that you cycle through in
Mm,
the game. So you want to pull that early and have that be like a consistent passive card.
hmm.
And then every time that you're using a card, you are adding like, I don't know, 1 gold to a gold bag via that card because each card that you use and discard is adding more power to that passive card.
Yeah. Um, so the moving on to the third document that they had talked about is the game loops
Game
document.
loops.
So this and answers the question: how does the game work? The main point of this, and maybe this should actually be a flow chart instead of a document.
Well, flowcharts are documents, but yes.
Well, I meant like instead of Google Docs, I should be using like a flow chart program.
We
Um,
can make it work.
we can make it work. I'll probably actually want to switch over to a flowchart making thing when we get around to this.
Yeah.
But
But we were just talking the other day about what we wanted game loops to look like.
exactly, and that's kind of partly what made me think back on this and say we should really do that. Um, Also, the fact that when I sat in this lecture, I was immediately going, "Yes, we actually really need to do this as a team."
Yeah.
Um, and even if it's just the two of us, it allows us to get this established early, and we can share it with the rest of the team, and everyone else will be benefiting from it. It'll be great.
Yeah. And they'll be able to give feedback on whether they agree or disagree, which
Yeah.
that's what we need.
Yes. It's more just to help build an understanding between all of us of what this game is and what it is going to be. Um,
Exactly.
and I think at this point, you and I are probably the most involved in the design part of the game.
Yeah,
It,
I
it,
would imagine so. Unfortunately, some of our people have been unable to join us due to medical issues, personal issues, but
yeah,
we know that they are
yeah,
excited to be here when they are here.
exactly. But even besides that, I think for our team size, it makes sense to have, 1 to 2 design focused people. Design is a specialty in game dev. It's not a
Yeah.
nebulous thing that we all do. It is a specific specialty, and none of us are explicitly designers, so we are kind of all sharing that
Ah,
task. But
you may not be.
well,
Ollie and I do have game design degree.
I have a game design master's. I'm
Oh,
and I
look
was
at
more
you, fancy fancy.
I was more just saying like typically in a team I play the role of programmer and a little bit of systems designer. I do actually do some systems design. Um, but typically my primary role is programmer. Typically, I would imagine, at least based on what we've said, your role is not programmer, artist. You know,
Generically speaking, but I've
yeah,
been obviously doing a lot of environmental design, so
yeah, 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 yeah. No, I'm not. I'm not trying to like downplay or anything. I'm more just trying to give like an idea to anyone watching now or in the
yeah.
VOD, just kind of like that design is a specific trade in game design that typically you would have a specific designer, but because we do not have a person who is solely focused on design, we are all kind of sharing that task, is kind of what I'm trying to get across.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a more fair way to kind of describe it. Anyway, circling back like a loop to the game loops document, um, so, like I said, the main question that the game loops document answers is how does the game work? So,
Yeah.
generally, the person recommended you start with your core loop, basically the 30-second loop of gameplay. We can probably expand that to like a minute or two based on kind of the style of our game.
Yeah.
I imagine it's going to be something like run around, explore, find resource, contribute resource to quest, get new quest, run around, explore, find resource, kind of that's
I
my
mean,
that's my current basic idea of the loop. We'll obviously address it a bit more when we get to it.
Yeah.
And
My initial thought process is interact with people because that is our primary focus. We want to have that social
Mhm.
interaction and then exploring and then the fulfilling quests.
Okay, I think I would, yeah, I like that point. I think it would then probably be interact with person, get quest, explore, find resource, complete quest, interact with person, get quest, explore, find
Yeah.
resource, get. That would kind of be that core loop. But then the idea is start with that one 30-second to minute long loop. And then actually, probably what we're talking about is one of these larger macro loops that they talk about kind of building around it.
Yes.
Um,
So we have a very, with what we just said, we have a very loose description of what our core gameplay
yeah,
is intended to look like. And that is basically what we need to hammer down, like what specifically that looks like, so that we can focus on with that smaller loop, what is the larger, longer term loop that's happening with that, because we do want to have it so that it's not just fetch quest, fetch quest. We
yes,
want to have goals that you are building towards. So, what is the larger loop that is being created by all of these smaller loops getting looped
yes,
together?
exactly. So it might be, out of the complete quest loop, there's also an arrow going towards uh, earn new building, build, collect resources for new building, build new building, unlock
Yeah,
new
exactly
person.
like the community center in Stardew, Gemma. Except we want a specific thing that is similar to the community center, and we want a lot of other things that are simply rewards for working towards building the community. So they are separate things that you do not have to participate in if you are not interested in both, but you will be encouraged to pick one or the other if you don't want to do both.
Yeah. And again, we'll get kind of a bit more into this when we circle back, pun intended, to this document.
There's
But
gonna be too many puns.
yeah, so generally, kind of some of the examples for this are obviously going to be more flowcharts, not something I can cleanly read.
Hmm.
Um, but it's not just a clean circular loop. It's kind of more of a spider webby flowchart of actions.
Yeah.
Um, it's not just it's not just a clean loop. In fact, I'll just real quick, just for fun, I'm going to draw out the. Let's see if I can do this. Actually, no, I'm just gonna flow chart maker. Yeah, let's try this. Create flow chart. No, don't make me sign up for a thing. Let me just. Do you let me just? No. Okay. Start free. Screw it. I'll just. Oh wait. Yeah, I'll just use my Google. Whatever.
Just use the strawberry jam Google.
That's probably smarter, but whatever. I'm here now. Right now, first, I'm just gonna make the. I'm going to recreate. Oh, and I had been using this before for like I think for a finite state machine or something. Oh no, no, no.
Mm.
This is for my thesis actually.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's my yeah, this was a breakdown of the Nine Inch Nails ARG they did
Oh,
with
nice.
their one album that I can't remember the name of it. Oh, it's gonna kill me. Anyway, um uh year zero. Um so I'm just gonna real quick make a blank thing, and we're just gonna real quick. I'm gonna recreate the one that they made as an example, which is the game loops for Doom. We're all familiar
Mm.
with the game Doom, right?
If you're not, you'll be doomed to
Yeah.
hell.
Okay, so I think it's okay, no, that's not what I want. That's not what I want. Okay, I want you. Okay. So generally with this, our boxes are our verbs. So at the core of the loop, we have explore. You go into a level and you explore. That is the first thing you kind of do in Doom.
Ah, yes, Chex Quest. I also learned way too late in life that Chex Quest was just Doom reskinned because I had seen my brother playing Chex Quest over his
Oh,
shoulder as a child, and I was like, ah, yes, that is a unique game because I didn't know any better at the
mm,
time.
that
That
is
was
very
so
fair.
funny to learn.
So from exploring, we get to find useful item, weapons, ammo, keys. So just examples of what those could be.
This is
Um,
specifically for Doom, not for our.
yes, so this is for Doom. So from
You
exploring, we
want to just
find
title it example board parentheses Doom instead of blank board up in the top left?
Doom.
That
That's
works.
the best we're getting. I'm not doing anything better than that. So the next one over here might be
Lead programmer, everyone. If
yes.
if they didn't say you're not getting anything better than that, I'm too lazy. You have a bad programmer.
Yeah, that is very true. The other thing you can do is you can find enemies,
Mhm.
and then from there, can I just do that? Oh, I can. That's very convenient. We can fight, or we can flee. And so either way, we end up going. This is going to get a little messy, but just roll with it. We end up going back to explore. So whether we fight or flee, we end up exploring afterwards because we've successfully beaten the enemies.
Mhm.
So finding useful items can also lead us into finding enemies because usually they're next to each other,
Usually.
and vice versa. So they can kind of lead to each other. Additionally, from exploring, we can find, I'm going to do a different thing, a secret area. And usually that will lead right into finding something useful.
Mhm.
Then, ultimately, once we've kind of finished out this loop, we kind of end up closing out a level with finding a boss slash area exit. So once we have kind of completed this loop enough, we find the way out, we find the boss, where we find the way out of the level, and we finish our loop. So kind of our core loop in here, the 30-second loop is explore, find useful item, explore, find enemies. This kind of trio right
Yeah.
here is
The
our,
exploration is the core and everything branches off from there.
yeah.
I do think that ours will likely be similar,
Mm-hmm.
except the explore and the talking to people are going to have basically equal branches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is the slightly modified version of the Doom core loop that they
Doom.
gave. Slightly modified from what they gave, but they had
This is the
like
bare bones basics,
yeah,
basically what we need.
yeah, and this is basically what we're gonna build. And then from there, it actually gets, we get a lot more complicated, right? We
Yeah.
get into kind of a bigger, broader loop of different gameplay systems interacting. Um,
Yep.
so, the fourth document is what we would call the resource flow. And I'm not going to make an example of this. Actually, maybe I will. Maybe I'll make a chart for it, but we'll see. So the resource flow is designed to answer the question, what choices do the players make? So we start with a box for every resource in the game, which for our game is probably going to
Mm.
be a decent number. Probably actually not quite as many as might initially, like it might initially seem. We'll discuss exactly what those will entail in a minute. But
Yeah.
um, and it also says to make sure to include abstract things like time, information, percentage of the world explored. So for our game, time is definitely going to be a big thing because it, you know, has
Yeah.
a Stardew like day night or day cycle and season cycle. So that is going to be a resource on this resource flow. Um, so the arrows between the different nodes are going to represent
Player
conversions,
choices.
no,
Mm.
conversions from one resource to another. So if
Mm.
I can exchange gold for wood, then I have an arrow going from gold to wood, right? I have a
Hmm.
way to get one to the other. And if I can't exchange wood for gold, then I can't, then there's no arrow going the other direction. Um,
Got
so
it.
generally it also then kind of recommends bounding like groupings of these exchanges into clusters that represent specific systems. So, for example,
The fish being all in one thing.
well, not even that. So, like generally, we'd probably just call that fish for a single resource node, but it'd be like,
Yeah.
let me go to one of their examples and see if I can. Um, uh, okay, so actually, for an example for this, are you all familiar with? Well, you all are. Shay, are you familiar with like Civ?
Civilization games?
Yeah,
I am passingly familiar. I have not played
great.
them.
Don't worry about it. You don't need the specifics. So generally, you have a bunch of different resources, but you have resources like population, um, and money that you can then use to make troops, which would be another resource. And then you would
Mm-hmm.
block all of that off, and it also takes time to make those troops. So that would then be the military chunk, the military systems is,
Okay.
that set of exchanges. Those nodes can be represented elsewhere on the graph as well. You might have the population resource appear multiple different areas for different loops and different systems, but we would end up with a military system that includes that sort of a loop.
Yeah.
Um, another big thing they talked about is finding loops between resources. So this is probably actually going to be easier to,
Display.
yeah, display with it blank here. So say we have gold in our game. You can exchange gold for,
Money can be exchanged for goods and services.
you can exchange gold for food. Um, food, we can exchange for, um,
People.
yeah, actually, I want to change this actually a bit. Raw, actually, no, I'll stick with food. I'll stick with food. Yeah. And then food we can spend to increase our population. Then our population produces gold for us to use to buy more food to get more population. It is a
Yeah.
feedback loop. So generally, some of the advice they gave is to keep an eye out for these sorts of feedback loops and decide whether or not they are appropriate for your game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, especially, um, they basically said that these are good places to look where anytime there is something that isn't balanced or working well, these are usually the
The
spots that
problem
are causing a
areas.
problem.
Yeah.
Another thing is, say we have this loop, and then I'm not going to fill in these things, but say we got, whoops, uh, we then have, food also branches out to another loop over here, separate, and then, this then goes over here to our victory points, what you need to win the game. And then,
Vicrati.
yeah, and then you have another loop over here with population. And this loop doesn't actually
Go
interact back
anywhere.
in. So we would then kind of look at these different sub loops and be like, oh, well, the most important loop kind of is this top loop. It's kind of the core, kind of the core loop going on. And then we have these different loops branching out from it, but not all of these loops are created equal. Not all of these loops are equally important. So if our game is getting bloated, we need to look to loops like this
What
and be
are
like,
the
well,
ones that are
do we
able to be
want
cut
to
out?
keep this? Or better yet, do we want to explore the idea of finding a way to integrate it into other loops to try and make it so that this, if we like this loop a lot, we might say, okay, well, we need a way to kind of bring it in to the
Yeah.
rest of the game. We need to integrate it in with the rest of our game. So
This is
that's kind of
basically a
a
visual way of organizing what the different aspects are and finding places that we can prune it down.
yes. So most of their examples are like dramatically way too complex to demo here.
Yeah.
But at least I will go ahead and go through one of their examples um, because it's simple enough and it kind of shows the like level of abstraction that you kind of want to get to with this. So this is going to be the resource flow for the original Super Mario Bros.
Mm.
So up at the top we have points. It's an NES game. It has points because that was the era of gaming and game design. Everything circled back to points that didn't actually do anything.
Yeah.
So, how do we get points? Well, one of
Yeah,
the things we can
that
do.
game with Luigi and his brother.
Yeah, yeah.
And also that pink lady that was never interested in either of them.
And always in another castle. So
Always in another castle.
one way you get points is through coins. Another way you get points uh, is through killing enemies. Um, Another resource in the game is lives. Well, you get lives by getting more coins, and you also get lives by killing enemies. The jumping on an enemy 8 times or whatever gives you a new life. I'm not going to answer your survey
Time is
right now.
also a resource
It's
that translates
sure.
to points, but I don't think that it really connects to much else except for lives, because if you run out of time, you lose a
Yep,
life.
that is actually the next one I was going to be adding. So
Let's
time
go!
does interact with life and points, or lives and points. But lives can also give you more time. If you die, it resets the timer. So you can
Mm-hmm.
exchange lives for time. Um, that's kind of the level of abstraction that this document is designed to get into.
Yeah.
And then the last resource is movement.
It has to tie into lives because you
Yep.
sacrifice the lives of your beloved companion for a little bit of movement.
Well, not in the original. In the original, there is no Yoshi. Yoshi doesn't come around until Super Mario World, I think.
It doesn't matter.
That's fair. Either way, if you move poorly, you lose a life.
Yeah.
Um,
It also attaches to enemies and coins because you move
um,
to collect the coins, you move to kill the enemies, and all of that circles around to points.
well, movement also goes directly into points for finishing the level. But the way that they had done the diagram is it doesn't actually connect into enemies or coins.
Mm.
These are interactions, like interacting with coins generally has this effect. Interacting with enemies generally has these two effects. The movement is kind of where what that interaction turns out to be, but the movement and enemies don't directly interact. The movement and coins don't directly interact per se. Does that make sense? Like you don't generate
Yeah.
enemies as a resource by moving. Your
But you
movement,
do, by moving, produce coins by interacting with the blocks, and also by interacting with the blocks, you can get power-ups, which increase your movement
yeah.
and
So
could
we could
increase your
also
ability
include
to
like
fight
power ups in this.
enemies.
Yeah, but this is about like the resource flow is specifically about what exchanges you can make, not what
Yeah.
interactions there are. So you can exchange movement for points by completing the level, and you can exchange movement for lives by dying, by
And you
jumping
can
into a pit.
exchange power-ups for movement by taking damage or tanking damage.
Sure, sure. I'll throw power ups in here, and we can. That is not one that they actually did, so we'll figure out what it connects to. I like that. So
This is I just figured it'd be good to
yeah,
stray away from the example a little bit so
no,
that
I
we
agree. I
can.
agree. Yeah. So power ups, um, they do directly give you points when you pick them up, so that's an easy connection.
Mhm.
You can exchange movement for power ups, and similarly, like you mentioned, you can also get more movement through your power ups. But I think that's kind of the only interactions there. Like
Um,
power-ups don't give you more lives, they don't give you more coins, and they don't give you more time. They neither they don't produce enemies as a resource.
no, but enemies can drop power-ups occasionally, like the Hammer Bros.
Not in the original. That's only in
Uh,
that's in Super
well,
Mario Bros. 3.
I didn't play the original
That's
apparently.
fine. That is fine. You don't have to have. But that is kind of the resource a more complete resource loop.
Yeah.
Um of the original Super Mario Bros. For the NES. So, um, now that we've kind of talked about what the different documents are, um, uh, I don't want to just completely like reiterate their entire lecture. Um,
Yeah, that they people who didn't go to GDC don't need to hear the whole lecture.
no,
That'd be unfair.
but I will go real quick through the uses slide that they had of what are the uses of these
Yeah.
documents. So, use one is solidifying your own understanding of the game. Um, as well
Understandable.
as
Have a nice day.
kind of your team's understanding of that game, making sure that it is solid and consistent across the team.
Mhm.
Additionally, identifying positive and negative feedback loops, especially in something like the resource flow chart, um,
Oh yeah.
or even in
1,000,000%.
these gameplay loops. Are these? Did I make these with different programs somehow? What did I do? I don't know. They look
What did
completely
you
different.
do?
I wish I knew, but whatever. We're here now. Um, uh, It also helps you identify material to cut to kind of streamline your game.
Mhm.
Identify overloaded and overemphasized elements of your game that then can kind of be broken down and simplified. Um, Finding potential victory and failure bottlenecks. So, bottlenecks to victory or failure. Um,
Yeah.
so, kind of going back to that uh, thing I had earlier where only one thing led to victory points, well, that's kind of a bottleneck of getting to victory, right? You
Yeah.
have to interact with that system. And so how do we break that bottleneck a little bit is we focus on expanding other things into that system or finding other ways that that system can interact or even finding other systems that could just directly give victory points as well.
Yeah, makes
um,
sense.
and then uh, let's see, and then that last point is actually not relevant to us. um, and then they actually went on to do like build out the vision, all of the different documents for the talk that they had just given. So they
Hmm.
wrote the vision for the talk, the pillars for the talk, a resource diagram for the talk, and kind of a loop of the talk.
Very fun.
Yeah, and also just to shout out the person who did it. Uh, their name is Ian Schreiber, and they got a Blue Sky, which you know what? I'll just go ahead and go follow.
Yeah.
Might as well. I think it's just Ian Schreiber. And I think that is the right person. Yes, that is the right person. Yeah, follow.
I mean, best case scenario, we make friends with them.
Yeah. And then,
Worst case
anyway.
scenario, we see them show up on the feed.
Mm, environmental storytelling. What is this? Non potable water, do not drink. Yeah, that sure is some environmental storytelling right there.
I I have to say, I very much hope it was a dog. I know it's probably not,
It
but
very potentially is not, and that is always a lovely fact of the world. But yeah, so
um,
are there any questions about any of the documents? I feel like I'm giving a lecture like a professor. I've kind of entered professor mode with this stream so
you
far.
definitely went into teacher mode.
Oh,
You had
absolutely.
you had your teacher voice on.
I definitely did. I Part of it's also that I want to actually introduce this lecture to my class for some of the
Yeah.
classes that I teach because I think it's a really good set of documents, a really good kind
Gemma.
of design start.
Gemma, no.
Ah, Gemma.
Gotta quench where you can, babe, no.
Gemma got that dog in her.
Are you calling her a bitch?
No, no, I'm saying that she's more open to drinking toilet water than most.
I don't know. At some point, I feel like calling her a bitch would be nicer.
Potentially. But that's not what I've done. So I'm sticking with what I've done. Um, anyway.
Certainly a thing. This is going to be in the VOD on YouTube.
Yeah, it sure is. Um, yeah. So, Gemma, do you have any questions about the documents? Gotta take questions. It's professor brain time. I gotta do my question time.
You know, I was interacting the entire time, so
Yeah. Oh, or any of our other viewers too. We're at 6, so we got a few.
ooh.
I don't know what Eli 5 is, so I'm just gonna take that as it makes enough sense. But yeah, um, so circling back around to the
Pun
vision
intended.
document. Uh, well, yes, but we're not to a loop document yet. We're starting with the vision. We are starting with the vision. So, um, I
Uh
I think the best way to
Explain
do
like I'm
this.
5. That's what Ellie 5 is.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, I'll take that as a compliment because
I mean, if you can explain it to a 5-year-old, that means pretty much everyone can explain it, so that means you're doing successful, good job,
Yeah.
teacher.
Yeah. So the going back to the vision.
For our game,
Um,
take me to the woods.
yes. So, um, I think I will. I don't know if I want to. Hmm. We want that kind of. It's supposed to be kind of that catchy one-liner for the vision itself, and then
Yeah.
a couple of bullet points clarifying. Um, so I think it should kind of encapsulate the idea of um, exploring the wilderness and building a community are kind of the two vision points I see.
Building friendship and community in the wilderness and shaping the world around us to benefit everyone.
I'm going to phrase it as reshaping the world to benefit everyone.
Yeah, because we're not focusing on like just one person or just a
Yeah.
small group of people. It is everyone that we are interacting with in the game.
Yeah. I'm
And
actually
we
going
want
to,
that social interaction and that community
yeah,
building to be the main focus.
I agree. I am, first off, I think this should be like bold and like highlighted. This
Bold,
is
italicized, underlined.
yeah, this is the key idea. We're gonna do center justification for this. But I'm actually gonna take issue with the word reshaping. To
Y-
me, reshaping kind of gives the idea of exploiting the environment and building it into something we want. So I think that word isn't quite in line with my understanding of the vision.
I mean, you also picked the word
I
reshaping. I
did,
just
and
said
I'm
shaping.
yeah, I did, and I'm now taking issue with it. Um, um, I think rather than shaping or reshaping, maybe something like um uh the idea of like harmonizing with the world. You know, yeah, we're
I have a word in my brain. I just can't remember what it is.
okay. Okay.
I'm
What about reimagining the world to benefit everyone? Because that can still include like building things, making changes, but it's not just about resources or exploitation. It kind of gives the idea of more of an idealistic sort of vibe, which I think is, to me at least, kind of core in a lot of
yeah.
the identity of
I'm
this game.
I can't remember the word specifically, but like something along the lines of encouraging growth. And that could be both physical, emotional,
Like facilitating,
facilitating. Yeah, kind of not facilitating feels very
it feels
clinical.
clinical. Yeah. Um, I don't know what the other word you might be thinking of is. That's just the one that came to my mind for the
Fostering is a good word.
fostering. Thank you, Gemma. Okay, fostering. What about fostering growth in the world to benefit everyone?
That works. Yeah, I don't know what word I'm thinking of. I feel like it starts with an E.
Mm, encouraging.
It's something similar to that, but like not encouraging.
Um,
I don't know. I'll either think of the word or I won't. It'll probably come up in like an hour.
yeah, I'm sure it'll come up eventually. So how do we feel about this as our vision statement?
I mean, that feels very. I mean, obviously, I gave most of it, so I feel like that's very encapsulation, a very good encapsulation of how I'm viewing the game.
Hmm. I
So,
I think generally it matches with my vision for the game as well. Um,
because
I
we have
might.
a very, what we have already is a lot of characters that are defined and a lot of undefined characters that we want to have people interact with. So that social aspect is very front and center.
I
And
might
then
try
the,
something with it. Build a community of friends in the wilderness. Because then it's, focusing on building a community, and that community consists of friends rather than having them be building friendships and community, tying these two concepts into one concept.
yeah, well, we can also have people join the community who are not yet friends and foster that community with
That's true.
and just make friends
Hmm.
over time. Because I know that we had floated the idea of like the grumpy old fisherman
Yeah.
archetype, and those people are usually hard to break through the shell,
Hmm.
but they are definitely a valued part of the community, especially once they have formed those relationships with people and they formed those connections and they have recognized that, oh, I'm not going to be abandoned again.
What about this? Build a community and foster friendship in the wilderness. Because to me, I like having the word community first, because to
The
me, that is
focus.
more core than the individual relationships of
Yes.
that kind of friendship entails. So I like having community be the earlier word. Because also building a community is both um, building the social network that is a community, but also physically building the space that is a community, because
Yes.
both of those are a large part of this game. You know, the actions in this
So,
game are action words, are verbs, are building,
yeah.
you know.
So if we're gonna have foster friendship, we should change the second fostering to encouraging.
Yeah,
And that's just me being a writer brain and be like, you don't
yeah,
want to have
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
same
yeah.
word over and over and over again.
I agree. Encouraging growth in the world to benefit everyone. So we have kind of this. Well, this is kind of interesting because now we have this kind of microcosm of building a community and fostering friendship in the wilderness, but then we're encouraging growth in the world, which kind of sounds like a more broad, larger scale thing. And I don't know that that's reflective.
I think I don't particularly see that as like the entire world. I see that as the world that we are interacting with, including the bits of wilderness and nature that we are simply passing through.
Hmm.
We are having an impact on that, whether
Hmm.
we intend to or not. So
I
we
agree.
have to be very intentional with how we interact with that space and make sure that we are not taking more than we need, that we are leaving things alone when they need. We can help out a little bit by, like, if we see a plant that's getting suffocated by dead leaves, we can move the dead leaves. But, like,
Yes. I
trying to encourage the world around us to be a little bit more than it would be otherwise,
I agree.
rather than exploiting.
I I agree. With that as an idea, but I think it's more just specifically the word world that I maybe am drawing issue with. Like I might prefer a word like encouraging growth in our environment, in our um something a bit more localized. Because to me,
The world
encouraging.
around us.
Okay, okay, I could settle on the world around us. Um, yeah, encouraging growth in the world around us to benefit everyone.
Because like our environment is not part of the world.
Yeah, no, I agree. I certainly don't disagree with that point. It's just to me, I don't I don't want it to lead to a sense that we are having like this is about broader change. And it's more just I want to exclude the idea of broader change. Does that
Yeah,
make
we
sense?
are not trying to
Yeah, whoops.
we're not trying to turn our little community into a major metropolitan area that will have impacts on the wider world as a
Yeah,
whole.
exactly. Like there's no
But
like broader, oh, like in Stardew, for example, you do interact a bit more with the world more broadly by negatively impacting Joja. It does kind of have a ripple effect from there. That's not something I think
I
is.
mean, I don't particularly view it as such. I view everything that happens to Joja as a local microcosm, and it's basically like one Walmart closing. Like, it's not going to have any ripple effects to the rest of the world.
That's fair. I always kind of read it as it also sending kind of a message to Joja of like, hey, these smaller communities don't value, something like Joja, you know, kind of
I
a
don't think that that's the kind of message that would ripple up the chain to Joja. I think it would
right.
probably stop at Morris.
I agree that realistically is where that message would stop, but to me, the themes of the game feel like it's saying smaller towns don't value this, support local, support this, support that.
Yeah. I mean, support local, but also Pierre's a bitch.
Yeah, yeah, he's a little bit of a dick, but end of the day, he
Oh,
is.
God, so many of the characters in Stardew are just absolute assholes. Like, no
Yeah,
matter how much you talk to them, how much you spend time with them, like, yeah,
that is very fair. I think there's a certain amount of realism in that.
it's very realistic, but also, like, it does not make me want to support Pierre. Like, the only reason I buy everything from Pierre is, well, actually, there's two reasons. A, literally, Pierre's shop is closer to the farm.
Fair.
And B, fuck Joja.
Yeah, and I'm actually quite sure that the having Pierre's shop be significantly closer is a specific design decision as well.
Oh yeah, 1,005%. Because I think most of the seeds are 10 to 20 gold cheaper at
Yeah.
Joja. But
Yep.
like, is that 10 to 20 gold worth your time?
Yes. And instead of making it a direct, just strict benefit of choosing Joja, it's very clear from the outset that it is a choice. And especially because you kind of have to find Joja in the early game. You don't know it's
Yeah.
there. You
Unless
know.
you've played several times before.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it all kind of is different for like a repeat player, but like for a first time player, you don't know that it's there unless you spend a lot of time specifically exploring the town. And at which point you would still find Pierre's first, and you would probably buy your first round of crops from there. And maybe then you'd go and find Jojo and be like, oh, it's a little cheaper here. I'm gonna buy from here for a little bit. But then as you kind of become engrossed in the story, it becomes more clear of the, thematic choice that you're actually making.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's kind of all getting a little um not
We're not
our
going to
game.
have that complex moral decision of whether to support a mega corporation versus an asshole local person, because we're only going to have local people.
Yeah.
We're living alone in the woods to start.
Yes. Yes.
Until
Um.
we get our first person, it is literally just us and the wilderness
Yeah.
and
Although
our broken down car.
that is true. Although I do think that as we have it laid out, getting that first person is like first 20 minutes of gameplay at most.
Yeah. I
But
think I think that the easiest way to have our first person show up is like our last phone call before our phone dies. We
mhm,
call our friend and are like, "Hey, can you come pick me up?" And
exactly.
then, oops, they end up in the woods too.
Yep. And then it's just, well, I might
It
as
better
well,
be a Subaru.
yeah. And then just a little bit of, well, I might as well, get, do a little
Well,
bit
they
of
can't
something
come
while I'm
until
waiting.
like the next day or 2 days later because
Yeah,
they have to wait till the weekend or until they're off work.
exactly.
Um, so I guess I have to survive out here for a couple of days.
Yeah. Um,
Whoopsies.
Mechanically, I'd probably also want those days to not have like time.
Yeah.
And instead of letting you freely explore and gather as many materials as you want, it's kind of having it be more like a very specific walkthrough of like, go over here, find this, that kind of more basic tutorial.
Yeah. I love the idea of like, hey, it's very non-diegetic, but there is very few places that you can go, so you are going to
Hmm.
learn the base area. Like I'm thinking the first clearing area where you had already set up your camp, you have like that very first basic tent that you had been camping in for the last couple of days set up. You have your campfire, and you have that area and you have the creek nearby where you can like learn fishing
Yes,
for the first time because that just makes sense. And
I
there's like
agree.
maybe one or two forageables that you can pick up on the way to the creek
Hmm.
from the clearing area.
Yes. So let's keep working on the vision document, I think. I
Yeah.
agree with those kind of broad notes about that early tutorial session, and I'll have to make sure and go and rewatch the VOD at some point on our YouTube that has all of our VODs.
Oh my gosh. Well, it doesn't have
Little
all of them
plug,
yet.
little plug.
I'm working on the
Portal.
portals
Yeah.
one
Um,
eventually.
yes.
I have so much homework. Oh my God, babe.
That is painful. I feel that. Um, anyway,
Yeah, no,
let's
as soon as I'm done with stream, I have to go and do homework. So
yeah. Yeah, we might not actually get through all four or all three of these documents today, which is fine. I think that
that's
this
fine.
I might even be willing to do another Friday meeting stream next week.
Yeah, I don't actually have to check my schedule because into April I'm going to be
Right.
traveling. I
Well,
should be okay, so next Friday is the 4th. I will not be available.
okay. Well,
Um,
that is fine. We can sort that out on the Discord sometime between now and whenever, as far as
yeah.
scheduling. Um,
I also don't know if I'll be available for Wednesday.
that's fine. I have ideas
I
of
will talk
things
to you
I
about
can
that.
do as a solo game.
Yeah.
So that might be
But
a
I think I
surprise.
should be able to do my Sunday stream because I know I won't be able to do the stream on Tuesday. So
Okay.
we'll see about that.
Yeah. We'll figure it out as we go. We will
Yeah.
play it by ear. We are small enough streamers that nobody really cares what we do. Okay, so let's break this down into,
Hey.
as in nobody cares if we break the schedule, not nobody cares what we're making or what we're
That's
doing.
fair.
No, there's no expectations of us being like a super, like what a full time streamer. If a full time streamer is like, oh yeah, every Monday we play Pokemon, and then on Monday they don't play Pokemon, the whole community gets upset, or they just no show a stream, that's a big deal. We're
Gemma,
small enough
I'll
streamers, it
pretend to
doesn't.
be upset that you will pretend to care.
Thank you, Gemma. Um, but yeah, let's go ahead and break up this vision statement a little bit. So,
Yeah.
what is this vision statement trying to say? To me, um, it is.
Community is the main focus.
Yes. Focus on community and relationships in the community. And then in parentheses, we'll note that as part of the community simulator genre. So let's also
Mm-hmm.
just real quick specify,
That's the more Animal Crossing.
yeah, genres. Little community simulator. And we will notate that as CS. Um,
Yes, computer science.
yes. What other genres could describe it? Let's see.
Cozy gaming.
Okay, I like cozy. Cozy.
Because specifically the genre of cozy games, it does not have really a set of mechanics attached to it. But what it does mean is that the consequences for actions being, whether that good or bad, are not,
Relatively minimal.
well, I'm not going to say minimal,
Hmm.
but there are no disastrous consequences.
Yeah.
You are free to explore and do things or not do things without much consequence and simply enjoy being in the world. So
Definitely.
no major negative consequences
Yeah.
specifically.
Okay. Um, let's see. Community simulator, cozy game. We'll go ahead and also throw out resource management. Is that a genre? Probably.
Resource management seems not specifically a genre in and of itself, but a widely known mechanic,
Yeah.
which does make a difference here.
And I'm going to go
I
ahead
would
and also
I would
throw
count
out
that.
town builder as a genre. Probably wouldn't use the language of town, but I'm mostly doing it so that we don't have another word start with C in our acronyms. So TB,
Yeah, that's fair.
because built
Oh
like,
no, TB, tuberculosis.
yeah, unfortunately our game has tuberculosis.
Shit.
Yeah. All right.
Uh, Gemma is saying psychological horror.
I'm gonna veto that one actually.
I don't know. Those caves, man.
I wouldn't call that psychological horror though. I would
There's
psychological.
remains of beings in
That's still
there.
I wouldn't still call that psychological. To me, psychological horror is like horror to do with the mind. You know, the psychological is the operative element in there for me.
Yes.
You know, it's not a like a scary monster isn't psychological horror. Like Saw is psychological horror, not modern Saw, but like the idea of I have to overcome my own mind in order to escape this horror.
Hmm.
You know, to me that's maybe, and I don't even know if I'd call Saw psychological. Horror genres are a whole thing I'm not going to get into. People,
Psychological horrors are, in my opinion, things that are relatable to real life experiences. Like the idea of being stalked is
mhm,
definitely psychological horror.
yes,
Um, the idea of constantly being watched, that is psychological horror. There is a fine line between psychological horror and like paranormal that you can like slip between,
mhm,
but psychological horror
I
in
think
my mind just has that extra dash of this has an extra element of realism and could be happening to you right now.
I think I would take a step sideways from that definition personally. Now that I'm kind of thinking about it a bit more in different terms.
Hmm.
Um, to me, like I think maybe a good way to look at it is what emotion does the horror cause to differentiate between horror genres. And I think
Okay.
psychological horror is horror that induces paranoia as the primary type of fear. Like, am I being watched? Is there someone in that shadow over there? It's, that feeling of paranoia versus, the visceral fear of a monster is about to attack me, or the existential fear of cosmic horror.
Me
Does that
too,
make sense?
Gemma.
What is Gemma saying?
Um, Gemma is saying, "Joke's on you, I'm always paranoid." That comes with mental illness, babe.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, um,
That was a fun tangent about
it was.
our cozy game, talking about the difference between the different genres of horror. What a time.
Was.
What a world.
As well as organizing community goals and projects. And that can be summed up under resource management slash
Hmm.
town building. Um,
Rheumatoid tuberculosis.
yeah. Um,
Sorry,
um,
my brain is just like, ah, yes, tuberculosis. John Green knows so much about tuberculosis.
he sure does.
He wrote a whole book about it.
He did.
Explore and harmonize with the environment around the community and engage with the spirits in the
Woods.
woods.
That's what I'm going. And I'd put that under like cozy games because it's just kind of
Yeah.
like vibing, exploring, kind of engaging with different the spirits.
Yeah.
I'm using spirits broadly because while most of them are Fae, not all of them are necessarily going to be. And
Yeah.
but that's also a discussion that we have to have with in terms of the writing of how narrow and how broad do we want to go with the fantasy elements.
Yeah.
So that's a different
I
discussion for a
that's why I
different
was
day.
hoping Beans would be able to join us for this because I would love to just have a stream with me and Beans where we
Yeah,
specifically talk about the writing and how that interacts with the environment because there's a lot of non-diegetic storytelling that I can work into the environments that
yeah.
would be very helpful for them,
Hmm.
and then telling me about like the specific ideas for what they're writing about would help me with the environmental design as well. So
Yeah, like having a sign above a toilet that says non-potable water.
exactly. Beans, if you're on stream, let's schedule something, please.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Let's see. Um, what else? What else?
Um,
Um, uh, help delegate. I wish I could spell correctly. Day
oh,
to
bro, me too.
day tasks for community members, and that's under, I'd put it under that under resource management
Okay.
to help achieve community goals. And that second part would be community sim.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. This does actually, uh, this is gonna cause some problems. I already know that this what I'm about to talk about is gonna cause
Mm.
problems. But
We love problems. We love
but
dealing with problems early.
so a large part of the game is
Hmm.
generally kind of anti-capitalist vibes, right?
Yeah, that's generally how it be because we have decided that we wanted our game to not really have currency.
Yeah, no
We
monetary
want our
system.
game to shy away from the standards of capitalism for how everyone interacts with it and focus on like valuing people and their crafts and their skills
Yes.
in non-monetary ways. And
Yes.
obviously everyone is going to have to in the community contribute to helping towards the common good, but that is something that they agree to when they join this community. And if they did not want to join the community, straight up they would have said, no, I'm good.
So that's actually part of what I want to kind of get into a little bit. And
Hmm.
I feel very comfortable on like on our Twitch, on our VODs. People who are watching this are the people that are actually invested and probably going to be more in line with a lot of the philosophy that we have. Um, to me, I think one of the more kind of problematic aspects of capitalism is assigning value to people purely based on their productivity.
Yeah.
And I think that we might not, I think that we might kind of be leaning into that a little bit by having all of our characters be specific trades, right? We don't have any characters that are members of the community who are non laborers, who aren't able to contribute, but are still supported by that community, right?
Well, I think that it's not
Like whether through
a lot of people.
disability or age, like a child or an elder who is no long who isn't able to work or help contribute, they are still valuable and important members of community despite not
Yeah.
having labor contributions. And to
But
me, I
there
don't want
is
to.
the while we are bringing people in, like I'm specifically thinking of as an example, the pottery,
Yeah.
the ceramicist. In most places, ceramics is not viewed as a profession, it is viewed as a hobby. And we have also decided that we want the ceramicist to be wheelchair bound at
Yes.
least part of the time. I don't know what the specifics are that we ended up deciding on, like if they are partially wheelchair bound or fully, doesn't
I
really matter.
Yeah, it
But
doesn't really matter too much. But I
the
think we decided fully for the ceramicist. But again, yeah, it doesn't
yeah,
truly matter at this
but
point.
the point is there's going to be periods of time between inviting people in and when their tools and places of quote work are set up.
Hmm.
And we also have a very small community. There's not always going to be a need for all of the different people to do their same things all of the time. Like there will be a critical mass of ceramics where simply it will not be needed for them to continue
Hmm.
making pottery and ceramics. And then at that point, they are simply a member of the community. They are able to contribute with their skills and they are able to help other people where they're able. They are able to just be a valued member of the community, regardless of if they are actively producing or not. But
Yes.
I think it is simply a part of community that everyone wants to contribute something, even if it's just something small. Like,
I agree.
we've talked about the old grumpy fisherman. Like, the old
Hmm.
grumpy fisherman is not going to be fishing for a community. He's fishing for his own enjoyment. He's fishing for himself. And like, yes, he would be, once we have the relationship, able and willing to help teach us, but simply having him as somebody who enjoys doing that and occasionally shares what he has, that is still a very valuable member of the community. And
Hmm.
especially as an older person, has a lot of very good lived experience that is good to share via talking to people.
I don't disagree at all. But I think it could also lead to interesting, like an interesting element of the story if we have someone who, for whatever reason, excuse me, I might be about to sneeze. Never mind, it's not coming. Okay. Um,
That's the worst.
uh, I think it could be interesting, especially as a storytelling piece of having a character who truly cannot contribute labor or other, you know, cannot contribute what we would traditionally consider value to the community. Um, and I think that could lead to an interesting discussion of, having that person be self-conscious about that and, have their self-worth, explore that feeling of, I don't feel like I'm able to truly be a part of this community because I'm not able to contribute because, like there are people who just due to disability or for whatever reason cannot do labor. And I think that, so much of, kind of the capitalist
Yeah.
existence
That
is your value as a person is intrinsically tied to your productivity. And I think that's kind of the biggest tragedy, one of the biggest tragedies of capitalism as a system.
yeah.
I
I
don't know.
also think that this brings up the discussion of invisible labor and the quote traditionally feminine jobs that are done
Hmm.
like in communities and around like homes
Hmm.
where the work that is done is not seen as work or labor, and the
Yes.
amount of time and energy that goes into like specifically organizing community and homes
Hmm.
is vastly undervalued.
I very much
So
agree.
having somebody who is coming in and like a lot of their skills are soft skills like management.
Well, I think that's kind of the player character's role primarily, right? Is
Yeah.
community management and being that kind of soft skills person. But I'm even talking more about like, someone who I don't know, maybe is,
Well,
even if it's like a young child, like a 5-year-old who, needs to be supported. A 5-year-old really can't
yeah.
meaningfully
Well, we can
contribute.
very easily have one of the people who comes in and joins our community have a child.
Hmm.
And the thing about children is that they are sponges. They learn so
Yeah.
much so quickly. And they also provide a lot of unique insight that I think is very underappreciated by adults because simply they view the world in a different way because they
Hmm.
do not have the same life experiences. They have a lot less life experience, yes, but they have completely different life experiences than adults would because they simply grew up in a different time. And
Yeah,
I think that that insight of children is vastly undervalued.
I don't disagree.
So, if you want to have a child character, it's easy to
Yeah.
tack a child onto somebody who is coming in. We can have the
hmm
discussion of who makes sense for that.
I
Um,
personally, if we did have a child, and I think I had talked, we had at one point discussed the idea of the farmer and the rancher having a child from potentially one of them having a previous
relationship.
partner back when they before
Yeah.
they discovered their queer identity. For context for people watching, the farmer and the rancher are a gay male couple, um,
Yeah.
and
I
they're
mean,
on the older side, as in like somewhere in their 40s, not older than the
yeah.
majority of the other characters, but not old. Um,
I mean, it also doesn't have to be before they discovered their queer identity. It
no,
could have just been by the entire time.
no, that is also totally fine. But I think we had talked about the idea of exploring that
Yeah.
idea of discovering a queer identity late in life
I
with
thought that
them.
we had had that discussion more about with the fisherman
We
because
discussed,
the
yeah,
fisherman we had discussed him being like 60s,
mhm, yeah,
which
and we can definitely do
again
that there.
that fits the community elder
Yeah, well,
and
yeah,
yeah.
I also think we maybe we should put a
We
pin in
should
this
refer
particular
to the
discussion.
community characters sheets
Yes,
for
well, more
this.
than that, I'm saying we should also not have this discussion without Beans also being present as the writer.
Yeah.
This is probably more of a writer discussion than a discussion for us to be having without the writer.
Yeah. Well, we're still just
No,
talking
no.
about like, hey, what are the kinds of people that we're going to have?
Yes, I agree.
But
But yeah,
yes, in
um,
general, we want to make sure that we're including the appropriate people in the discussion so that we can get correct
mhm,
information and not build off of a shaky foundation.
yes. Um, but yeah, also kind of circling back, uh, part of what was kind of actually lately making me think about the idea of having a character who can't um, contribute in the same way as others, even as an adult, is that's actually a big thing that my partner is dealing with right now. Is they
Hmm.
have significant disabilities and things that prevent them from being able to have a job and help support themselves. They aren't able to do that, and
Yeah.
because the world is what it is, disability isn't exactly easy to get, and
Yeah,
so
I have
that's
a
a
couple of friends who are in similar
yeah, and so that's a big source of like
situations.
anxiety and in a way guilt for them, and I feel like that's a really important story to like that kind of story is also very important to tell, and I think that that's also one of the strengths of this type of community
Yeah.
focused thing is you not everyone does need to contribute in productivity. Not everyone needs, there's no
Yeah.
requirement for that. Even if just aren't able to contribute at all, you are still a human and you are still valuable simply for
Yeah.
being human. And I think that's a
That's
piece
something
of this
that's
type of
lost
community.
a lot.
Yeah. And I think that's just specifically lost by having all of our character like we are defining our characters by their labor. We have the farmer, we have the forager, we have the blacksmith. We're even just
Yeah.
verbally defining them by their labor. And that's fine because they are, game mechanics. They are ultimately um, means to an end in the mechanics of this game.
Yeah.
But I think it could be interesting to also explore you know,
I mean, I
communities
think
that
we've
support.
mostly been referring to them as their jobs because we don't really have names for them yet.
Yes, yes, I agree
I
with that.
think
That
that's
that
the
is
bigger
why.
thing.
Yes, but I think it's also indicative that that is also how we conceptualize them initially is we need a this, we need a that, we want a this,
Yeah.
if that makes
I
sense.
mean,
Again, I'm not saying that that is a bad way that we've done things. I certainly don't think it is.
Yeah,
I think
no.
it's the correct way to have done things. But I think it's, I think it would be interesting to have a character that is not a anything.
Well,
I don't know. Again, probably a
I
discussion to,
a discussion to have a lot more nuance,
yes.
absolutely. I am very much of the opinion that, like, regardless of your disabilities, you are still able to do things. You are able to contribute to society, even in non traditional means.
I
And, like, it's okay to not have that be a labor, like a physical hard labor, but there is still work that needs to be done that can and is done by disabled people
Yes,
in the real
absolutely.
world.
And I
And
absolutely agree with that.
I
But
I just the thing that I'm taking issue with in just the way that you have worded it is like not able to contribute at all. That goes against my beliefs that everyone is a valuable part of the community because everyone brings different things, even if that's just your life
yes,
experiences.
and that's what I'm saying is I agree, and that's kind of the thematic point I
Yeah.
want to address is
I
I'm
think we're just
saying
getting caught up in the wording.
yes, I want to establish a character who is entirely like I like the idea of a character that is entirely unable to do any labor at all. Any value that they provide is not at all through any labor, whether that be physical or mental. They are a part of the community and that is their value. And part of that is stemming from, conversations I've had with my partner where, they feel like they can do nothing and they feel like they have no value in whatever sense. And
Yeah,
I
which is
think
a
that
very different thing from
yeah,
actually the fact
and I
that they are inherently valuable as a person.
absolutely. I mean, they're my partner. I obviously agree with that.
Yeah.
Um, but I kind of what I'm trying to get at is I think that touching on that anxiety and maybe even like not exaggerating that anxiety, but like, do you get what
Delving
I
into it.
delving into it and having a character that can kind of represent some of that anxiety, um, even if indirectly, you know, kind of, even if it is more extreme than some people have that feeling, you know,
Oh,
I
and
imagine, based on conversations with my partner, that that is a very common anxiety with a lot of people who do have physical disability is that anxiety of being a burden and not being, you know,
yeah, and there's also the if you were made disabled later, the anxiety and frustration around not being able to do what you used to.
yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that I don't know, that's just kind of a broad kind of like character discussion I thought could be
Yeah,
an
that's definitely
interesting
something to
addition
bring up
to
with
the community.
beans.
Yes, I agree. But something that we had said kind of led me into that thought again of remembering it. And
Yeah,
I think it's a interesting direction that we could take a character. Um,
absolutely.
especially in terms of a story. And I think that, actually, we've talked a couple times about the idea of matchmaking in the community, and I think that
Hmm.
broadly probably won't work at a larger scale because we are having characters come in pre-established relationships. But I
Yeah,
think that could actually be an interesting, story arc for that particular kind of character of like helping, somebody seeing that value very directly and very clearly and like helping foster
yeah,
that particular relationship, I think could be a uniquely beautiful moment.
yeah. Well, something interesting that I have noticed in the world as a whole is that often disabled people end up in relationships with other disabled people
Hmm.
purely because they understand each other's life experiences.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
I just think that's interesting. I don't know if that's something that we want to delve into at all in our game, but it's just
I think that's probably
something
something that we'd
interesting.
want to have a consult on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, this is more for context of people viewing because they probably don't know this. But we've talked a lot about wanting to do like specific consults on specific topics that we aren't ourselves able to, you know,
Yeah.
experiences that we are
Especially
not
with
able to represent.
yeah, especially with groups of people that we do not ourselves represent.
Hmm.
It would be very disingenuous to try and represent, say, the experience of living in America as a Black person. We simply could not do as well as a Black person because we do not have that lived experience. So, if we want to
Exactly.
represent that experience, we want to make sure that we are being respectful to people who do have that lived experience.
Hmm. Or, any other combination of experiences that we
Yeah,
maybe don't represent
exactly.
on our team. And that said, and maybe
The
now is
funny
kind of
thing
a
is, we have a weird overrepresentation of asexual people.
and non-binary people.
Yeah. Yeah,
Actually,
I
I,
just
I
think
think
that's so
all five of the
interesting.
core team might, in some way, might fall under the non-binary umbrella.
Yeah. Well, technically all of us fall under the trans umbrella, but
Yes,
like
I,
there's questions about in the queer community about like are non-binary people accepted as trans? And it's just kind of like,
I was not assigned non-binary at birth. I am trans. That's my personal take on it.
that's fair. I don't feel like I align with any at all. Like I'm
Yeah,
more of an agender than a non-binary. So like
that's fair. I I take issue with I not to sorry cut you off. You keep
you're
going.
good. No, that was the end of my
Okay. Okay. What I was gonna say is I take issue with people that try and like um force non-binary as like third gender, as like a third option. It to me it very much is not. It is everything that
yeah.
is between cis man, cis woman, everything that is outside of that spectrum, everything that is yes gender, no gender, more gender, less gender, 50 other things, changing gender, not
Yeah,
as in a fluid changing gender, not as in any form of trans.
I kind of view the gender identities as island, like as islands, like cis man, cis woman, trans woman, all of those are islands, and then non-binary is literally just the water between all of them.
I can see that. Um, I I might actually open up GIMP real quick and because I have tried to explain this many times and I just cannot verbally explain it. The way I kind of conceptualize gender. Um, do I have like a line tool? Is there a lines tool?
There should
Uh,
be.
I'd imagine so. Where is it? Or do
Try
I
right
just
clicking the brush.
okay? Well, if I just do pencil and then I just like yeah, I can just okay. So and for whatever reason, my colors are red and on like a very very light blue background.
Yeah.
Um, so imagine this as a 3D shape, kind of a tetrahedron, a
Yes.
triangular pyramid, right? Um, So to me, the way I kind of view gender is down here we have agender. Wow, it's our font is working here. That's great. Um,
Hmm.
I'm gonna switch it to Times New Roman though, just to make it a little easier to read, maybe.
Yeah.
So down here is agender. The closer you are to the bottom of this pyramid, the less gender you have. Um, Over here, we maybe have male. Over here, we'd have female. Um, well, actually, that's bad. It We're talking gender, so it should be man, woman. Okay, what happened there? Whoa, man, woman. And then over
Whoa,
here we
man.
have uh, third gender, which is I think the correct term. And then everyone exists somewhere in this three-dimensional space. You might exist, somewhere. I'll switch colors. You might exist somewhere on this line between. Why are you not drawing? Oh, because I'm on the wrong pair. You might exist somewhere on this line between man and woman. You might exist somewhere in this space down here, you know, relatively minimal amount of gender and vaguely somewhere between woman and third gender for the amount of gender that you do have. Or you might, identify up here just purely at man, and then, you know, that's how I conceptualize gender. And then to me, more specific labels are just kind of like regions in this three-dimensional space. So like man would be like uh the region, you know, within, a little bit of variance from this corner here would all be considered man. Um, the region similarly close to this corner would be how I conceptualize woman. This is just kind of me talking about how I
Yeah.
think of things, but um,
Yeah. I think that you understand my island metaphor. Like,
yeah, I
islands are places that you can visit. There's a lot of room on them, but also it's very easy to walk off the island into the ocean and just go anywhere that you want or need.
yeah, yeah, I very much agree. Um,
So that's just how my brain is like, yeah, no, that works.
yeah,
You
that makes sense. I think for me, I like a very um, like I like physically
like
representing
shapes.
things. Yeah, very much mathematical brain kind of here because this can easily be turned into a
You
mathematical representation.
math?
I know, it's
Never.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I feel like the fact that my concept is very abstract in nature is, I don't know, it seems appropriate.
yeah, I agree. Um, but yeah. Uh, okay, so we got through the vision document. Um,
Roughly, yeah.
I'd say we got pretty well through it. We have kind of some
We
key
have,
points.
yeah, we have the things that I think are going to be the most important. It's very easy to add from here.
Yeah.
The question is going to be if slash when we want to take stuff out as we figure out what actually works versus what doesn't.
Mm. Well, the whole idea is like with all of these documents that they aren't like a strict set of rules so much as if the vision changes over time, we update this document.
Yeah.
And I think broadly this encompasses our vision of the game. It's not super mechanically focused, it's more focused on the ideas of what you will be doing.
Yeah.
And I think that is like barring a significant change to the direction of the game, I think this is pretty well encompassing.
Of what we're trying to create.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Um,
No issue with it.
yeah. Uh, yeah. So honestly, I might say it might not be a bad idea to have this be a shorter stream instead of also going now and doing the entire pillars document because that is, I think, going to take significantly longer than the visions document.
Yeah.
And I know you said you have some homework to do. I have a board game night I'm doing with some friends tonight, so I have to
Ooh, fun.
get ready for that to an extent. Um, so yeah, that might be the end of stream for today. A little bit of a short one, but kind of just a good little, 2 hour
Yeah.
hangout. I think that's kind
Yeah.
of nice sometimes.
But also, Gemma is very correct. It's so strange how groups of similar people just find each other.
Yeah.
Like
Actually,
I have to tell you, I have the perfect example of like how weird it is because one of my friend groups that I am in the most contact with, we met in 2020 via Among Us.
hmm,
And we started with making a Discord so that we could just like play stupid game via voice chat instead of having to type everything. Um, all of us, and I mean all of us, are queer in some way, gender nonconforming in some way. Half of us are disabled, the other half are not diagnosed with things. And
hmm,
it's just like the sheer fact that so many of us have so many similarities, and we literally, that's the most random way that you could meet people via an online game on the internet.
yeah, yeah, that is
It's
kind of wild.
it's weird and wonderful, and I love my friends so much.
Yeah. Actually, I will say, probably before we wrap, we should maybe quickly touch on the idea of actually maybe this is like a better private discussion, not a stream discussion of talking a bit
Mm.
about onboarding and team stuff.
Yeah, that's a private discussion.
Yeah, so but we
I
we
mean, we
we
also
can
need to have a private discussion about what we want to share with the stream and the internet versus what we want to keep secret so that it is a surprise for people when they start playing.
that is very fair.
Because,
Um
like, yes, I want to share the entire process, but also, like, it's fun to be able to figure stuff out and find it on your
yeah.
own.
No, I agree.
And it's just something that I've been thinking about as
Hmm.
I've been, like, making secret areas in the map.
Yeah. I mean, I think this early on into design stuff, it's probably
It's not
relatively
a
fine
huge
to
deal
share
because
everything because secret
everything's gonna change.
areas, yeah, the secret areas are probably not going to be in the same place that we put them today.
Yeah,
You
they're
know,
not gonna be exactly the same.
yeah, the levels are going to be iterated upon. Design is going to be iterated upon.
Yeah.
Nothing that we say today is going to be relevant to the game when it is released.
Well, not
Well,
nothing,
not
but
nothing,
the
but
the overarching themes will be the same, but the details and how it's implemented is
yeah,
what will change over time.
yeah. Um, but yeah. Let's see. Is there anything else that I wanted to talk about? Um, I can't really think of anything, so I guess I'm gonna go ahead and find someone to raid.
Yeah, it sounds like I followed a person recently. Um, let me see if I can find them. Um, Erisera is their name. ERISERSRA. They are also a game dev. I came across them on YouTube a couple days ago. They actually stream in the same time slot during the day that I do, between 1 and 5 p.m. So they should be still going for at least another hour. And I
Oh,
think
okay.
it'd be cool to hang out with them.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. What did you, are they are they streaming right now? Can you double check?
Uh, I believe they are. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, they are.
All right. And then what is their name?
Eris Erisesra.
Uh,
Erisesra.
Erisira.
Erisesra.
ESRA. ERISSER. Wait.
No, only one S at a time.
ERISESRA.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. All right. Okay. Well, actually, I have to click the launch raid button. Well,
Yeah, that
it
might
was
be
nice
helpful.
chatting with everyone.
Yeah.
It was a good stream. We had some good conversations. We made some good progress in terms of you know, design work on our end, and it
Yeah.
was good just hanging
To
out.
hammer out some details as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Argue about semantics of wording.
yes, always the best. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and click the button for rating now. Hopefully we'll see you all soon. Shay, you said you might be doing a art stream on Sunday.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be doing art stream on Sunday. So I will update everyone on my Blue Sky as soon as I know the details.
Awesome. And then if you're not available next Friday for a stream like this, I might do a programming stream. And then of course we'll also
Sounds
have
great.
some form of a gaming stream on Wednesday, whether that is both of us or just me, we'll figure out. So
It might be just you because I think I'm traveling. But
that's fine.
let's
I'll figure it out.
go.
All right, let's go raid.